much, Chair. I'd like to introduce to the left of myself in the front row is Emma Terry, the Chief Executive of the South Australian Tourism Commission. To my far left, Hataf Rashid, Executive Director of Events SA, and to my right, Stephanie Rozakos, our Chief Operating Officer for SATC. In our second row, from the Adelaide Venue Management, Anthony Kirshner, the Chief Executive, Marie Hannaford, the Chief Governance Officer. And in the third row, from South Australian Tourism Commission, Nick Jones, Executive Director of Destination Development, and Eric DeRuse, the Executive Director of Marketing. And I just have a few words to start. We went to the election with a commitment to building back our tourism and hospitality industry, and I was so pleased last week to announce an all-time record high of our visitor economy of $9.4 billion. I have a line that says people are talking more about South Australia in the last year than they have for a decade. And when I've been interstate to ministerial meetings and tourism events, we certainly have been noticed more than we have for quite some time. I just really want to thank the team at the South Australian Tourism Commission and all of our tourism operators throughout South Australia. It certainly was a very challenging time during COVID. Many of them were hit incredibly hard, particularly those with an international outlook. Then we, of course, saw South Australians enjoying their own backyards. So what that actually meant was this period of uncertainty where not a lot was happening, and then, particularly in the regions, a lot were happening. What we're looking for is to continue to build. We have an ambition to get to a $12.8 billion economy by 2030. It is something that is aspirational but attainable. And very excited that this year Emma Terry came on and joined us as our Chief Executive Officer. The other point I want to touch base on is particularly in our area of river recovery. We saw a flood for the highest flood in a century impact our river regions. So that's Murray Lake, Coorong and the Riverland regions. And we've had a $4.6 million effort from the Tourism Commission to focus on marketing and, of course, our vouchers. And I was very pleased this morning to talk about the impact of those River Revival vouchers. The impact for round one was $3.1 million. That, of course, is about the bookings, but, of course, the direct and indirect spend that we saw there as well. We saw this immediate economic impact of the use of the vouchers. But what we saw incredible awareness increase there as well. When we did a survey of more than 1,100 voucher holders, 70%, more than 70%, said they had not intended to book a holiday, but once giving the voucher that they then made the effort to book and do that. And also more than 50% were not aware of the operator before the voucher program happened. So that's really pleased with that outcome. Now, of course, we're in those second round of bookings, and already $2 million has been booked. More than 2,200 vouchers have been utilised. But, of course, we are encouraging people that they must do their booking by the 25th of July. If they don't use it, they're going to lose it, and then we'll have a second chance round, and people will know the 27th of July if they have that. We did learn a lot from that first round, including have a much longer time for people to book the travel. I was also very, very pleased today to announce that Illuminate will hold their regional exhibition called River Lights at Mannum, and that will be between the 4th and the 13th of August. So we're going to have light, tech, music, creativity. We're really going to ask South Australians to take their time to visit Mannum and to really enjoy that. We know that they were impacted severely during the flood, and this is one of the other ways that the Tourism Commission and the Malin Arsis Labor Government is supporting that region.
Member for Moriato. Thank you, sir. We'll go straight to questions. I might start with the omnibus questions, if that's all right, Minister.
Fantastic.
For each department and agency reporting to the Minister, how many executive appointments have been made since the 1st of July 2022, and what is the annual salary and total employment cost for each position? That's question one. 2, for each department and agency reporting to the Minister, how many executive positions have been abolished since 1st of July 2022, and what was the annual salary and total employment cost for each position? 3, for each department and agency reporting to the Minister, what has been the total cost of executive position terminations since 1 July 2022? 4, for each department and agency reporting to the Minister, will the Minister provide a breakdown of expenditure on consultants and contractors with a total estimated cost above $10,000 engaged since 1 July 2022? Listing the name of the consultant, contractor or office service supplier, the method of appointment, the reason for the engagement and the estimated total cost of the work. 5, for each department and agency reporting to the Minister, will the Minister provide an estimate of the total costs to be incurred in 2023-24 for consultants and contractors, and for each case in which a consultant or contractor has already been engaged at a total estimated cost above $10,000, the name of the consultant or contractor, the method of appointment, the reason for engagement and the total estimated costs. 6, for each department and agency reporting to the Minister, will the Minister advise whether it met the 1.7% efficiency dividend for 2022-23 to which the Government committed, and if so, how was the saving achieved? 7, for each department or agency reporting to the Minister, how many surplus employees are there in June 2023, and for each surplus employee, what is the title, classification of the position and the total annual employment cost? 8, for each department and agency reporting to the Minister, what is the number of executive staff to be cut to meet the Government's commitment to reduce spending on the employment of executive staff, and for each position to be cut, its classification, total remuneration cost and the date by which the position will be cut? 9, for each department and agency reporting to the Minister, what savings targets have been set for 2023-24 and each year of the forward estimates? What is the estimated FTE impact of these measures? 10, for each department and agency reporting to the Minister, will the Minister advise what share it is receiving of the $1.5 billion the Government proposes to use over 4 years of uncommitted capital reserves held in the budget at the time it took office, and the purpose for which this funding is being used in each case? 11, for each department and agency reporting to the Minister, what was the actual FTE count at June 2023, and what is the projected actual FTE count for the end of each year of the forward estimates? What is the budgeted total employment cost for each year of the forward estimates? And how many targeted voluntary separation packages are estimated to be required to meet budget targets over the forward estimates, and what is their estimated cost? 12, for each department and agency reporting to the Minister, how much is budgeted to be spent on goods and services for 2023-24 and for each year of the forward estimates? 13, for each department and agency reporting to the Minister, how many FTEs are budgeted to provide communication and promotion activities in 2023-24 and each year of the forward estimates, and what is their estimated employment cost? 14, for each department and agency reporting to the Minister, what is the total budgeted cost of government paid advertising, including campaigns across all mediums in 2023-24? 15, for each department and agency reporting to the Minister, please provide for each individual investing in expenditure project administered the name, total estimated expenditure, actual expenditure incurred to June 2023 and budgeted expenditure for 2023-24, 2024-25 and 2025-26. 16, for each grant program or fund the Minister is responsible for, please provide the following information for the 2023-24, 2024-25 and 2025-26 financial years. The name of the program or fund, the purpose of the program or fund, budgeted payments into the program or fund, budgeted expenditure from the program or fund, and details including the value and beneficiary of any commitments already made to be funded from the program or fund. 17, for each department and agency reporting to the Minister, is the agency confident that you will meet your expenditure targets in 23-24? Have any budget decisions been made between the delivery of the budget on 15 June and today that might impact on the numbers presented in the budget papers we're examining today? And are you expecting any reallocations across your agency's budget lines during 23-24? And if so, what would be the nature of this reallocation? 18, 5 to go. For each department and agency reporting to the Minister, what South Australian businesses will be used in procurement for your agencies in 23-24? What percentage of total procurement spend for your agency does this represent? How does it compare to last year? 19, what protocols and monitoring systems has the department implemented to ensure that productivity, efficiency and quality of service delivery is maintained while employees work from home? 20, what percentage of your department's budget has been allocated for the management of remote work infrastructure, including digital tools, cyber security and support services, and how does this compare with previous years? 21, how many procurements have been undertaken by the department this financial year? How many have been awarded to interstate businesses, and how many of those were signed off by the CE? 22, how many contractor invoices were paid by the department directly this financial year? How many and what percentage were paid within 15 days? And how many and what percentage were paid outside of 15 days? And 23, how many and what percentage of staff who undertake procurement activities have undertaken training on participation policies and local industry participants this financial year? Minister, will you be good enough to take those on notice for
We
us?
will take those on notice.
Thank you.
Oh, I can give it a go. Do you want to
I've
read
seen
them
that done
again?
once before, sir. It was not enjoyable for anyone involved.
Okay. You're going to point us to a line in the budget?
I
now?
would... Yes, I am now.
Excellent.
Sir, for tourism, can we go to budget paper 3, chapter 2, page 25? And we're looking at expenditure. Tourism is projected to decrease by $67.7 million, primarily due to higher expenditure in 22-23 for new and existing leisure events to further drive economic development and visitation to the state as economies open up following the COVID-19 pandemic. Can the Minister update us on any operating efficiencies that have been achieved since 1st of July 2022, if any?
Thank you for your question. The SATC was required to find savings in 22-23, 4.1 million through operating efficiencies and consolidation across the agency. The SATC achieved these savings through cessation of funding that was allocated to one-off projects which occurred in 21-22 and will not continue in 22-23, including the Great State Voucher Stimulus Measures, the Working Holiday Maker campaign, and the SATC's new contracts and procurement CRM. There was a reduction in event sponsorship for various events and implementing corporate services and operational efficiencies.
Just in relation to that, I think one of the efficiencies was discontinuing the procurement of a CRM. So what's SATC doing instead of proceeding with that procurement, just using the old system forevermore? Or?
They have paid for the system and they are using it.
So
they
it's,
don't need...
it's discontinued because it's paid for?
Yes.
Well, that's good news.
Good to pay your bills.
Can the Minister advise whether there is any operating efficiencies that the tourism portfolio is still required to identify to meet its budget task?
So the savings target for 23-24 is 0.8 million, comprising of efficiency dividends from previous years, and those savings will be achieved through cessation of funding that was allocated to one-off projects which occurred in 2022-23 and will not occur 2023-24, in implementing corporate services and operational efficiencies.
Have the specific operational efficiencies within corporate services been identified? And if so, what are they?
As I understand, as I've been advised, to look at those efficiency has been a recontracting of the office building that SATC are in, and a new stationery contract, which has reduced some costs as well.
And the remainder of the cost savings identified... Well, actually, sorry, before I ask that, can I ask how much of the savings burden is being borne through these office savings in the lease and the stationery?
That contract. Yeah, the contract. The savings is only 800,000, so I think that's the majority of it. Yeah, by the end of this session we'll find out any others. If we'll come back to, I can give that to you before the end of the session.
And perhaps then I can wrap in the other part of my question, which was going to be what are the one-off projects that are ceasing, that are creating the other part of the savings task? These projects here. You don't have others to that.
we'll provide that to you by the end of the session.
Thank you very much. Are there any, is the Minister able to identify what operating efficiencies are required in the future years of the forward estimates beyond this year?
There are no new savings as part of this forward estimates in the budget. So at this point, right, so there are no new savings as part of the 23-24 budget. So at this point, there are no need to look at it to the forward estimates.
And the savings that have been required by previous budget or budgets have now all been achieved, and so going forward the Tourism Commission is on an even keel, if you like?
As I've articulated, those savings targets have been reached.
Thank you. If I go to Budget Paper 4, Volume 4, page 92, the workforce summary, if we can use that. I notice some variance from the 21-22 actual to the 22-23 estimated result, and then some variance in the other direction for the 23-24 budget. Is the Minister able to explain why we've gone up 31 and then down 15 over the last 2 years?
Yeah, sure. So the SATC's FTE count as of the 30th of June was 132.7, and that's within the current year FTE cap of 141.3. The increase in this 2022-23 financial year is due to a combination of vacancies filled, additional resourcing required for the AFL Gather Round and Live Golf, an extra budget provided for marketing, which included funding extra FTEs. The SATC's FTE cap reduces from 141.3 in 2022-23 to 126 in 23-24. Due to FTEs associated with specifically funded initiatives and FTEs attached to funding received in the 2022-23 from the Major Events Fund, which sits within Department of Premier and Cabinet. Now, that has been to fund new events. It is anticipated that the 2023-24 FTE cap will increase with funding received from the Major Events Fund this financial year. So therefore, there are no planned FTE reductions. The SATC will work to be within the 2023-24 FTE cap of 126, and the SATC has achieved all previous FTE savings targets and will implement a workforce strategy to realise any future FTE savings if the need should arise.
Thank you for that, Minister. Can I clarify what I took from the answer in relation to the 22-23 budget figure of 126? Yes, sorry, you're correct. You're anticipating that that may increase with funding coming over from major events to support staff that are engaged in supporting Live Golf and Gather Round? Is that
and all other new events that will come on board.
And any other new events that may come on board. Can the Minister advise then, in relation to 22-23, from this source of funds, is that just staff for Gather Round and Live Golf, or were there any other events that provided this increase?
Yes, as I already said, we did have some additional for marketing. As you may recall, we went to the election with a $45 million increase in South Australian Tourism Commission because we wanted to focus on building back our tourism economy, remembering at its all-time low it's at $4.4 billion. In the middle of COVID, when we came to government, it was $6.1 billion. We really wanted to maximise that opportunity. So there were some additional FTEs with marketing as well.
In relation to the staff that were taken on to support Gather Round and Live Golf, how many staff were we talking about and what were their positions?
So my understanding is obviously we do events all year round, and while we do that, one of the key things we wanted to do was build out our calendar of events. As I announced, the $9.4 billion visitor economy, that's 23 major events that we now have, but most importantly, balanced throughout the year. So we love Mad March, we've always loved Fringe Festival WOMAD, and of course the Tour Down Under and the tennis. But what we really wanted to do is see events throughout the whole year, and things like Illuminate, which is coming on for its third iteration right now. These are things that have balanced it out, along with Harvest Rock and things like that. But of course, we were very thrilled to get both the AFL Gather Round and the Live Golf. Very competitive to get those opportunities, but we went out and had them. So these are marketing and event delivery roles. They're not just for AFL and Live. We also had additional people for the State of Origin, which was an amazing night that we had people in here for. And of course, we've got the FIFA Women's World Cup. And we're in charge here of delivering the FIFA Fan Festival. I was just looking out from the balcony room, and the tents are going up already. And it's very exciting. The eyes of the world will be on us. I think it's the third largest event in the world. There's the Olympics, FIFA Men's, and FIFA Women's. So very, very exciting time to have that. That's going to operate for 21 days. So throughout the year, we have people come on in these events area. What we try and do is keep them on for as much as possible, and they feel they get the experience that they can be as helpful as ever. Our organisational chart is on our corporate side, and I think they're under those marketing events SA roles. The same people across all those roles.
So how
it's
many?
Not specific.
How many positions were? Let's say how many FTE were funded by the transfer of funds from the major events fund? Then.
My understanding is approximately 5 FTEs, but of course, as I've reiterated, they work on more than one event.
Sure. In relation to again the workforce. We spoke in Multicultural Affairs about staff working from home during COVID and the desire of governments successive to return people to the city. Does the SA Tourism have a clear plan and timeline in place for staff that are working from home to return back to the office, if any still are? And if so, are you able to table that plan or advise us what it is?
So the Tourism Commission do have flexible working arrangements as required, and of course that is not just people who have full-time work from home, but part-time people as well. But the majority of staff work most of their days in the office.
So when you say the majority of staff, are you able to be a bit more specific in terms of if there's 126 or 132 staff, how many of them on any given day will be working from home?
Look, I'll need to take that specifically on notice.
And can the Minister identify whether this is due to flexible working relationships because of people's circumstance or a hangover, if you like, from the pandemic? And if
well,
it's
I think that the Tourism Commission is a great attractor of talent, and people are very keen to work for the Tourism Commission. I also think that they're a very modern employer, so I understand flexible working arrangements has been something that's been around for quite some time. And just as we said before, what we've seen in the past is we have, I know when the Tour Down Under was getting in full flight and the first time back after 3 years, we had some additional people in the events team working in that. So we do have people kind of coming on and off. Obviously our preference is to have them there for the majority of the year, which has been our focus on building out those calendar of events across the year.
Yeah, thank you. So the Minister has, I think, taken on notice in relation to the numbers of staff working from home, and I'm just seeking if there's any analysis done on whether that is going to change, has changed in the last year or will in the year ahead as well.
As advised to me, this isn't related to COVID or a hangover from COVID.
Okay.
To be an employer of choice is to look at individual circumstance. And obviously we're looking for very talented individuals at the top of their fields to work for us. And as I understand it, that's something that has been a key part for many, many years.
Pleased to hear it. Page 92, specifically to the Tourism Development Program line. There is, again, a variance between years. The 22-23 budget of 17,414 was either a very accurate budget with the estimated result, or potentially you might have an actual figure that is an update on that estimated result. And either side of that, that's a significant increase from 21-22 and a significant decrease to 23-24. Is the Minister able to give us some clarity over what's provoked these changes?
How can I just start with this one? Yes, thank you for that. It was a very close budget and estimated result. So there is a decrease of 11.2 million in net cost of providing services. This is specifically to do with development. Sorry, my apologies. So the decrease of 11.2 million in net cost of providing services in 2023-24, predominantly due to payments made to the South Australian Government Financing Authority 2022-23 associated with the Tourism Industry Development Fund. The fund provided 20 million over 2 years to stimulate private sector investment in new and improved accommodation and the development of quality tourism products and experiences across regional SA. Just grab me out the tab. And in the net cost of providing services here, the increase of 14.4 million in the net cost of services in 2021-22 to 2022-23 is predominantly due also to those payments, as I've talked about, to the Financing Authority. But there was also an allocation of additional funding in 2022-23 to provide the Tourism Industry Council of South Australia additional funding for the Tourism Industry Capability Building Program, which includes workshops and one-to-one business coaching, as well as a program to encourage young people to consider a career in tourism. Now, that was something that was an election commitment, something we had spoken to TIC-SA about, the different areas that we were doing there. Also, of course, we announced the allocation of funding to support a new program in the nature-based tourism activity, and that was a grant program. But can I just touch on the Tourism Industry Development Fund, because it was quite a significant fund, and I recognise that it was something that the previous government came out with as an economic stimulus. There were 114 projects across all 11 tourism regions. But what we have seen is a delay to some of those projects running out. And in fact, some of those, there's 18 remaining projects that will be completed in this financial year. So even though that money has decreased, we've actually seen it over 3 financial years, the money that's come down. So those remaining projects, because there's challenges due to building material shortages and trade availability. So we've got 2 projects still in the Adelaide Hills, 5 in the Barossa, 1 in Clare Valley, 2 in Eyre Peninsula, 1 in Fleurieu Peninsula, 2 in Flinders Ranges and Outback, 2 in KI, 1 in the Limestone Coast, 1 in the Murray River, Lakes and Coorong, and the Riverland that is still that are remaining. And I think we expect them to be completed this financial year. Yeah?
So there will be payments was in 21, but there will be a small amount paid in 23-24.
So we will expect another payment this financial year to be,
So, and I thank you for that. The Tourism Industry Development Fund and the Tourism Industry Council,
Tourism Industry Council of South Australia.
Those 2 programs having been one-off programs, if you like, coming to an end.
No, they're 4-year programs.
Does that explain? Well, sorry, those 2 programs having less money in 23-24 than they did in 22-23. They are the only things that have ended or are being reduced to explain this drop. There are no other divisions or branches in the agency or the department that have had any cuts.
The majority of the drop is, of course, the Tourism Industry Development Fund which has come through. But let's talk about the Tourism Industry Council of South Australia, because this is quite important, because probably the single biggest question we get is about skills and about jobs, and in particularly in regional areas, which the most exciting statistic, I think, is this rebalancing of where our visitor economy comes from. So 48 cents in every dollar is now in our regional areas. I may have mentioned it once or twice in question time. And this is really exciting for our regions. We saw a lot of South Australians get out there. But what we know is that getting skills, getting people to the regions, it's also one of the reasons we've put out the regional housing. I think it's called the Regional Housing Authority, because housing is a challenge to that, not just for government services, but for tourism as well. So our funding agreement with the Tourism Industry Council runs for 4 financial years, started last financial year, and this business capability program, they did an incredibly good job during COVID to be very agile and provide advice, but also these sessions for businesses when they needed to do it. This will provide industry capability workshops, including one-to-one business coaching to raise standards and quality. And they also provide workshops all over South Australia. And they held 35 workshops that was held last financial year. So they're quite active in the regions. Careers and Tourism program is also something that they've worked on, video targeting school leavers and digital assets in careers and tourism. But the one area I'm particularly would like to mention, which I think is incredibly important, is a cultural development program which delivered 2 forums to investigate the establishment of the South Australian Aboriginal Tourism Operators Council, SATOC. It's going to take some time for us to reach the achievements of WATOC in Western Australia, which I think has been running for more than 20 years. But it's our most significant unique selling point for a destination as a nation. When I attend those national ministers' meetings of tourism, we're in competition with the world. It'll be Canada, New Zealand, US, UK, but our unique selling point is the oldest living culture here. And obviously we have been talking about our voice here to the state parliament. We're having a big national conversation. But actually I think the opportunity to build depth and capacity in our Aboriginal tourism operators is something that is incredibly important. And this is having a voice, and that will be something that we're supporting over 4 years. And I look forward to talking to the Parliament and South Australians about that development.
Thank you. If we go down the line to tourism events, there's again variance between the 3 years, 36.7 million to 39.5 million. Actually, sorry, before I go there, can I just ask if if you have the actual figure for the previous line, the tourism development 22-23 estimated result being exactly the same as the budget result. I'd be interested if you have the actual, or otherwise take it on notice. I'd appreciate that.
We don't actually have that figure yet because we're just wrapping up final things.
Financial year, statements are due to the Auditor General at the end of July.
So our statements are due to the Auditor General at the end of July, so that's when it will be. I hear your curiosity.
Will be what twill be.
Okay, let's leave that one.
Thank you. All right, well, we will move on as I started to. So tourism events, let's say that the budget's accurate. So 36 million in 2021, 39 million in 2022, down to 30 million in 2023. Mm-hmm. Again, can the Minister explain the reason for the variance, up 3 million, down 9 million?
The decrease of 8.7 million in net cost of providing services is predominantly due to the expenditure incurred in 2022-23 on a range of new homegrown events and growth of our existing owned and managed events. The SATC received funding in 2022-23 from the Major Events Fund, which sits within the Department of Premier and Cabinet. The purpose of this funding is for developing these new homegrown events, grow those existing owned events and managed events, and securing major and international business events. So the increase of 2.8 million in net cost of providing services in 2022-23 is predominantly due to the return of the UCI World Tour Santos Tour Down Under after a 3-year absence due to the impacts of COVID-19. And can I just say, and I'd like to thank the team, it was an excellent comeback in its traditional format, more than 66.5 million economic impact, and it's got the eyes of the world on us. And I was really, really touched when Stewie made the decision, our race director, to start one of the races from the river regions. It'll be starting from Murray Bridge, and I think having that attention means that we haven't taken our eyes off the river, and we continue to do so.
And the impact of major events funding coming in that has increased it in between 21-22 to 22-23. Can you give us some information about why there's a $8.5 million reduction from 22-23 to 23-24?
So this one to this one. I've just articulated.
Are we expecting any further funding to come in during the 23-24 year, or is this it?
We would expect more funding to come in.
Okay. So if we go down to tourism marketing, and again, can you explain the variances?
Perhaps I might just start by saying, obviously there was an additional 15 million in 22-23. Now that was incredibly strategic from our point of view. We wanted to get back out there, building our tourism and visitor economy. It was a highly competitive field. Everyone was feeling exactly the same way we were, which is we want to get out there, build back up. There is a decrease of 13.8 million net cost of providing services, and that's primarily due to that additional marketing funding that I spoke about. Of course, our focus was about South Australia as a tourism destination to help us compete with other markets. This was particularly as we all opened up post-COVID-19. As I said, it was part of this 45 million over 4 years through to the 2025-26 to boost tourism marketing. The investment included that 15 million in 2022-23 to provide additional support to tourism businesses as the state emerges from COVID, and 10 million per annum across the forward estimates. The increase of 1 million in net cost of providing services is associated with the additional funding in 2022-23 for the River Revival Voucher Program. As I said, that was a significant program of just the vouchers and marketing, but it's part of our state government's River Murray Tourism Recovery Plan. It was aiming to stimulate visitation and expenditure in the communities hit hard by the River Murray flood event.
So are there any programs or services or units within the department that have seen reductions other than the drop from the high point in terms of the 15 million and the river recovery vouchers being predominantly again in that 22-23 year? So obviously those two things have seen a drop to 23-24, and it's a substantial drop. Are there any other programs or services that have been diminished or cut?
That additional money for marketing was utilised across the board. So I think you're asking if there was a specific program that maybe won't continue. What it did do was contribute to our strategic plans to grow our destination brand. It increased our paid reach and share of voice in domestic markets, and it helped us increase our investment in cooperative partnership marketing efforts to generate bookings. Contributed to the investment in key PR campaigns that helped generate publicity for the state. It increased the Tourism Commission's investment in digital performance marketing to help drive leads to South Australian operators, contributed to marketing of events in South Australia to drive attendance and increase visitation to the state, and contributed to rebuilding our marketing efforts in selected global markets, targeting the higher value travellers and working holiday makers. So across the board, I think you're asking if there was a specific program that would not be continuing.
Other than the drops that were described earlier.
And what I'm saying is there was a lift across the board, and so then that 10 million is in appropriations going forward, but we obviously saw a high. And it's this return to pre-COVID levels. But I'm very pleased at what we've been able to do with that Digital 15. They've spent it all, I can tell you. Not a cent left. We use the opportunity and to really go out there, go hard, and like I said, people are talking about us in a good way.
The eyes of the world. The budget paper for Volume 4, page 93, key agency outputs. One of them includes improving perceptions and attitudes towards South Australia as a desirable tourism destination. There may be other budget lines on the previous page we could also use, but particularly in terms of improving perceptions, does the Minister care to reflect on whether the Sam Smith concert has helped to improve the perceptions and attitudes towards South Australia as a desirable tourism destination?
Well, I think the Sam Smith concert is one of many different activities we've done. I think probably the major events have been the ones that's really turned people's heads the most. But as I've spoken about many times, we have to look at things for different age groups and different communities, as in interstate tourists, international tourists as well. I think that there are a diversity of responses. Not everyone loves football. Not everyone loves rugby. Not everyone loves the lycra that comes with the Tour Down Under. But this is why we have a diversity of events. You talk about something that was a really unique opportunity that was presented to us. We took that opportunity, but I think it's one of many things that we've gone out there, and that's what we've been able to do these past 12 months particularly. We've come out of the blocks really, really hard, and I think that we're perceived as a desirable tourism destination.
We could spend some time asking about budget, but we've done that before, so I might move on to my next topic, which is the same budget line, improve perceptions and attitudes towards South Australia as a desirable tourism destination. Does the Minister care to reflect on whether the TikTok camp where influencers were describing South Australia as the most boring state and disrupting the paradigm, or whatever the phrase was, does that help improve perceptions and attitudes towards South Australia as a desirable tourism destination?
Well, I think the rationale of using TikTok as a social media platform was because it has 1.6 billion global users at the end of 2022. It was seen as the time, particularly reaching out to that demographic of 18 to 34-year-olds. I am not a TikTok follower myself, but that might be dating
Well, you're not
myself.
allowed to. It can't be on your phone.
But I understand it's a juxtaposition of a comment and then saying, but it's not true. And I think that was the aim, to do that at that time.
How do you think it went?
Well, look, I think I've spoken about this before, to say that we've tried different things and we've gone out and do things, but our focus will be more on those traditional media. It's not that we won't be using any of these new forms of media, but I think our focus will be more focused on that. And of course, interesting statistic that it's less than 2% of our marketing budget is in this kind of new media. And I think a former minister, Ridgway, said his was about 3%, so we've already seen a change in that area.
So if the Minister's happy to give us that figure of less than 2% of the marketing budget, the marketing budget having been 44 million last year, does that mean the Minister's confirming that it was 800,000? No, sorry, it could be 900,000. It was 44 million.
Well, I think that is you doing some maths on the run, and I will endeavour
Yeah, I'd
to
be very pleased to have the accurate figure, Minister. If you'd like to correct my maths, I'd be
So,
very pleased to have the
was
real
not my
figure.
intention to correct your figure. I think that is the figure that I've got for that, and I can't confirm to you that that equates to the figure that you've presented to me.
All right, well, so
But
we've got,
we'll endeavour to give you an answer by the end of the session.
thank you. And that 2% figure, or $880,000 or whatever it is exactly, is in relation to the TikTok influencer camp and any other particular programs as well as that camp?
I'm sorry, you'll have to repeat.
The figure of 2% that the Minister used in relation to new media, can the Minister clarify that that included the TikTok influencer camp? Perhaps I invite her to identify what other programs or offerings that 2% figure or $880,000 paid for.
Standard for the TikTok campaign, that was 0.2% of the total marketing budget, 0.2% for that TikTok campaign. You were asking
So
about...
88,000?
I'll have to check that.
Yes. Yes, Minister, that's right.
Is that, where does it say that here? I'll get that figure confirmed for you.
Thank you. Was Zara and Mike Tyndall paid for their visit to South Australia, and if so, how much were they paid?
Well, they were invited to the Varlo Adelaide 500, so that is a question not directed to me.
Okay, so not out of SATC at any rate. Has the Minister got a figure on the total number of people who have been paid to visit South Australia by SATC and or the tourism part of the portfolio, and for what events?
No, I want to come here. So the cost for familiarisations, or familiars as we call them, we had an allocation 1.4 million for that. And that's when we had, how many people you had here on familiars? Yeah, and can you find that figure? So a familiar is something that we use quite often, and people use it across to allow people of influence to better understand a destination by experiencing it firsthand, to help them either on-sell or promote the destination. Now, that can be wholesalers who are selling on packages, or it can be journalists who are writing something about what we're doing. So it's quite, it's very commonly used across the area. Did you have the name of And I'll get that figure to you, I hope, by the end of the session, about how many people were used on familiars. But every tourism commission uses it. It's a way of showing your destination, and particularly to different markets.
And should we not have it by the end of the session, which is rapidly approaching, you're happy to take it on notice?
We will take that on notice.
Thank
but I
you.
actually
Some of the familiars are not actually paid to go on the familiar, colour some of the on.
Okay, so just a clarification of that. Actually, you want to talk about familiars?
Yeah.
Welcome to Estimates.
No, it will come on
They'll do it.
automatically.
Oh, right, oh, sorry. That's all right. Yeah, so just in terms of, just to follow on from the Minister, in terms of the actual, like the PR for Meals program, so that includes everything from trade for meals, which are very much stock standard, through to some of those influencer activities. They are not paid, though. They're not paid to come on those. We might cover some on-ground costs. We may work with industry in terms of what that experience looks like as well, where they also may contribute into that. So that is across the entire program for the entire 12-month period as well, covering all activities, including international trade activities as well.
And can I just clarify, all of these events that we're talking about, Sam Smith, the TikTok camp, etc., the FAMILS, which is a word I've never used before in my life until just then.
You just learned, yeah.
Are
deflate the
they
industry
all
standard.
out of the tourism marketing budget line, the program 3?
Yes, that would be under the marketing, yes.
Under the domestic marketing.
Yes.
And so I think the Minister alluded to this before, but am I to take it from her earlier response in relation to the TikTok influencer camp that there are no plans to do that again?
No.
Happy days. I'm going to go to page 93. There's a line here in relation to total leases, accommodation, which is fairly significant, of $5.6 million that appears in 23-24. Can the Minister explain what this arrangement is about, this new figure?
Sorry, I just missed the first part of what you said.
So page
Oh, the
93,
leases,
the lease
leases.
accommodation, yeah, it's a fairly substantial new figure.
Okay. I asked a very similar question when I was in your spot because it was already in the forward estimates. So the increases in leases and accommodation is due to the accounting treatment of the South Australian Tourism Commission's head office lease. Under the new Australian accounting standards, leases are capitalised and subsequently amortised over the life of the lease. The SAT's current head office lease is due to expire in March 2024, which time a new lease will be entered into for office accommodation. The increase in the capital budget in 2023-24 reflects the estimated discounted future value of all ensuring lease payments over the life of the lease.
Thank you. That's very helpful. Who is the landlord?
Sorry?
Who's the landlord?
Who is the landlord?
Is it government or private?
It's the Catholic Church.
Outstanding. And do we know how long the next lease is going to be for? Apologies if you've already answered that question. 5 plus 5. Can I move to page 94 and we'll talk a bit about river recovery in the time we have left? And there's a couple that talk specifically about the River Murray flood event. Can the Minister tell us how many vouchers receipts were from South Australia and how many were from Victoria?
Sure. So, as I've said publicly, I think we are 4,639 vouchers were in the first round. And I'll just see if I've got the vast majority, of course, were from South Australia. Our targeting for the Victorian and New South Wales were those border communities, particularly Mildura, which has a lot of contact here. We will get the answer to you directly, and I can come back to that.
Thank you very much. As the travel period for round 1 of the River Revival vouchers ended, as I understand, on the 29th of June, can the Minister tell us now how many vouchers were claimed? Is that 4639?
4369.
Sorry, that was the final figure?
4,369 in round 1.
Yep.
But I will get you the split of how many are from Victoria, but it's very low.
Thank you. So in round 2, how much was spent on the second round of River Revival vouchers in all aspects, consulting, the cost of the vouchers, etc.?
Well, the spent that's not something we can share with you at this point because people haven't booked their vouchers. But whatever isn't used, first of all, we're going to do this second chance draw. So if you haven't booked it by the 25th of July, then you lose it. Do a second chance draw and the people will know on the 27th of July. Any of those vouchers that aren't used will simply go into round 3. So there's no loss at all. We are deeply committed to keeping our eyes on the river, and I think we'll probably be there at least 18 months in from that event. We know that people missed out on their peak season, which is the summer season, so that's it. So There's no loss in the vouchers at all. We put lots and lots and lots of vouchers out there. Can I just remind you that in the last few rounds of Great State vouchers, these two regions had 2,700 vouchers. So we had not quite double the amount in round one. We've already got 2,200 booked in round two, and we're not even halfway through that. So it has been incredibly successful. 3.1 million in economic stimulus to these regions that have been impacted so strongly.
Thank you. Going to page 97, tourism events. The budget allocation and grants and subsidies for tourism events was 22,404,000, expenditure 45,527,000. Can the Minister explain this? Well, it's one of those irregular verbs. It could be called a variance, a change, a blowout, depending on who you're talking to, really.
I'm not sure that's the word I would use. Let me just come back to our previous question. We had 119 familiarisations in 22-23, and the breakup of those figures, obviously there was an airline initiative. Oh, sorry. My apologies. Something else to come back to you on. You recently asked me about other savings that we'd found in our budget. Airline initiative, which will not continue, 131,000. This rent stationery new contract saves 549,000. A lot of stationery. Regional review, we had this one-off cost, and that finishes this financial year, or finished last financial year. There were two of those things. Okay, the increase of 23.1 million in grants and subsidies predominantly due to the expenditure in 2022-23 on those new homegrown events, and that's the changes that we had.
And so that funding came from the major events budget to tourism, is that correct?
Sorry.
That extra funding, the 23 million, that came from the major events fund to tourism, is that correct?
Yeah. Yes.
And so that dealt with the expenditure that SATC had to undertake on behalf of the taxpayer to support these events. I presume it didn't comprise the total expenditure on these events, that some funding would have gone directly from major events to the AFL or Live Golf or whoever else, as well as this funding.
That would be a question directed to the Department of Premier and Cabinet.
Well, perhaps I can ask, did any funding go from SATC to Live Golf or the AFL to procure those events?
A lot of that money, and I don't have a specific figure, is about the delivery of those events. One of the things we're known for is our immersive events, and so when people come here, they really feel like an event is on. I got fantastic feedback about the two lots of rugby we've had in the last, the Wallabies were just before the last financial year, that we really put from the time people enter the airport. They see that we decorate the airport, King William Street is there. For example, not in the two events that you've asked, but for Frida and Diego, there is actually a street walk all through Adelaide, which kind of supports that event, and we've supported AIDA to deliver that as well. Okay, so I think that's what we're clear about, but there's some support around activation, delivery, marketing and city dressing. And that's some of the money that came from SATC for those events.
All right, so there was other funds as well from elsewhere, but you're not responsible for those, so that's fine. Can I ask then, seeing as the Minister raised Frida and Diego, a nice place to end might potentially be to reflect on the work that I think was an excellent project, that the tourism budget going towards bringing such a significant artistic endeavour to Adelaide, to the Art Gallery, and I commend Stephen Marshall in particular for his involvement in that project. Will the Minister follow that example and continue to provide opportunities for tourism drawcard events in the arts as well as in sports?
Yes.
Member for Moriarty, was that a rhetorical question?
It's got an answer, sir.
Okay.
Yes, I will.
The allotted time having expired, I declare the examination of the proposed payments for the South Australian Tourism Commission complete.